Hi, today we are going to learn about mucosal drug delivery system. So I will be teaching this topic in a series of lecture. So we will go ahead with the mucoadhesive drug delivery system. So what is this mucoadhesive drug delivery system? The name suggests, it says mucoadhesion. So it says mucoadhesive. Muco means mucous membrane. Okay, where are our mucous membrane is present? Nasal cavity, oral cavity. We have in the GIT also vaginal, rectal, and cornea in the eye. Okay, so these are the places where we have mucous membrane. Now we are designing a new dosage form. We call it as a mucoadhesive because this dosage form is going to adhere to the mucous membrane which is present in these parts of the body. Okay, we call it as a mucoadhesive drug delivery system. Drug delivery system. Now, what are the advantages for this? Why, you can ask me, sir, why we need to have this new drug delivery system, mucoadhesive drug delivery system? The reason for this is, let's say, first one, you can say the reason or you can say it as a advantages. If you have problem in these areas, let's say in the nasal cavity you have any problem, oral cavity you have problem, okay, in vaginal cavity you have a problem, rectal you have a problem. Instead of giving drug directly to the oral or vaginal or rectal cavity, what you are doing, you are taking the tablet systemically and the drug is been distributed all over the body, then it will act on the oral, vaginal or rectal cavity. So it is a huge process, it takes time, and also only less dose is going to reach those particular region. Now let's say a person is having problem in oral cavity. So in the oral cavity you have candidiasis. Some fungal infection is there in the oral cavity. Instead of giving the tablet and giving him systemic treatment, I can go for local treatment by designing mucoadhesive drug delivery system. So I will design a mucoadhesive drug delivery system. He will attach that system in oral cavity here. Here he is having candidiasis. He will attach there and the drug will act there directly. So one is local action. Two, by giving it as a local action, you can bypass. See, I am comparing the advantages which I am speaking here about mucoadhesive drug delivery system is in comparison with the oral conventional dosage form. We have oral conventional dosage form. I am comparing that with the advantages of mucoadhesive drug delivery system with the oral conventional dosage form. So in the oral conventional dosage form, the drug will go into the GIT, it will undergo first pass metabolism. So by giving it in its local mucoadhesive system, mucoadhesive drug delivery system, by giving that drug delivery system in locally, you can avoid first pass metabolism. Okay, you can avoid this first pass metabolism by giving this mucoadhesive drug delivery system because you are giving directly to the place where the problem is persisting. Okay. So these are the main reason why we need new dosage form, that is mucoadhesive drug delivery system. How the name came, because it is adhering to the mucous membrane, we call it as a mucoadhesive drug delivery system. Next, we will move on to what is the mechanism of bioadhesion. So what is the mechanism of bioadhesion? How this mucoadhesive drug delivery system is going to adhere to the mucous membrane. How it is going to adhere to the mucous membrane? Now, for this we need to know what is the mechanism. So mechanism, what it involves is, if you take any polymer, how we prepare the mucoadhesive drug delivery system, you will take a polymer, you will take a drug, mix them and prepare mucoadhesive drug delivery system. If it is tablet, it will be tablet, you have gels, you have films, etc., etc., mucoadhesive drug delivery system. So assume that I am preparing a tablet. So I will take polymer, I will take drug, I will add these two in the, I will give a shape for that in the form of tablet. Now the polymer here, we need to concentrate on this because the polymer which I choose has the mucoadhesive property. So how it has the mucoadhesive property? We try to see in the mechanism of mucoadhesion. We also call mucoadhesion as bioadhesion because it is adhering to a living surface. We call it as a bioadhesion. So we have different types of polymers here. So we have a polymer which contains OH group, we have a polymer which contains NH group, and we have a polymer which contains carboxyl group. So this, if any polymer, if you are taking a polymer for mucoadhesive drug delivery system, that polymer should contain these three groups. What happens here? These groups will try to form a bond with the mucous membrane. See, OH group will try to form a bond like a hydrogen bond. NH also will form a hydrogen bond, as well as carbonyl will also form a hydrogen bond. Okay, they will try to form a bond with the mucoadhesive membrane. Due to this bond, the bioadhesion will occur. See here. So we have a hydrophilic molecules which have this type of groups, either OH, NH2 or carboxyl group. Okay, we call it as wet adhesives. This type of polymers we call it as a name is given like wet adhesives. They form hydrogen bond. Okay, example are polyacrylic acid and chitosan. So there are two steps of bioadhesion. One step is contact stage, another step is consolidation step. How this bioadhesion going to occur? So in the mechanism of bioadhesion, first we need to speak about the polymers and how chemical makeup of those polymers which is responsible for forming a bond with the mucoadhesive membrane. Now mucous membrane. Now we have two mechanisms through which, or two steps through which this mechanism of mucoadhesion further proceeds. How? What? First stage is contact stage. So yeah, obviously for the mucoadhesion to be take place, you need to keep your dosage form on the mucous membrane like this. See, the dosage form is kept, this is the mucous membrane, and we have a dosage form which is kept on the mucous membrane. So initially what happens, there will be a contact established between the dosage form and the mucous membrane. That what is the contact stage. Next stage is consolidation stage. So confirming this contact, making that contact more firmly, that we call it as a consolidation step. How it occurs? It occurs through, see here, whatever I am drawn here, these are the polymers. Now these are the polymers which is present in the dosage form. When the contact occurs, once the contact occurs, this polymer will penetrate into the mucin polymers. See, mucous membrane has a mucin, is made up of mucin, and mucin again it is a polysaccharide chain. So we have polysaccharide chain of mucin. I can show here. So in this diagram, try to see here, what are the blue is there, that is mucin molecules or mucin chains. What are the red is there, our polymer. This is our polymer. So this polymer is penetrating into the or in between the mucin chain. We call it as a by forming what? By either by van der Waals force of attraction or hydrogen bonding, these polymers will penetrate into the mucin polymers. We call this stage as a consolidation stage. So initially contact is going to occur, then there will be a consolidation of that contact. So again this consolidation is divided into two. How this step is going to take place? By diffusion theory and also dehydration theory. There are two theories which explains about consolidation step. So what the diffusion theory says is, mucin is made up of these glycoproteins. What are the blue thing we are seeing here? They are mucin. Okay, and the yellow which is there, it is our polymer. Okay, this is our mucin. Now this polymer will be diffused. Okay, this polymer will be diffused into the mucin membrane. Okay, we call it as a interpenetration. So polymer will assume this is a mucin membrane, mucin molecules, and this is the polymer molecules. They will be getting diffused here. This is how the consolidation occurs. Next theory which explains about consolidation is dehydration theory. What this theory says is, there will be a movement of water molecules from the mucin to the polymer. Due to this, why this water molecule is moving? Because there is a osmotic difference in the dosage form as well as mucin. So mucin is consist of water, everything, mucin membrane, okay, mucous membrane, and when you place the dosage form, due to difference in the osmotic pressure. Remember, the dehydration theory says about difference in osmotic pressure. GPAT question. Which of the following theory says about the osmotic difference causes mucoadhesion? That is your dehydration theory. Due to this osmotic pressure difference, water will move from the mucous membrane to the dosage form. Okay, this water motion leads to consolidation of adhesive bonds. So what are the bonds which is formed here in the glycoprotein? Okay, in the first diffusion theory, these bonds will be again consolidated by also the movement of water. Why water is moving? Because due to the difference in osmotic pressure. Then we will see what are the factors affecting your mucoadhesion. So we have environmental factors like pH, initial contact time, swelling, and also we have physiological variations. What this factors affecting thing says about? Let's take pH. pH can influence ionization and deionization, or you can say pH has a more influence on the ionization of the groups. We know that pH dependent ionization. So groups are getting ionized in a particular pH depending upon their pKa. Okay, now see here, pH can influence the formation of ionizable groups where in the polymer, within the mucoadhesive polymer, as well as the formation of charges on the mucous surface. You have mucous surface, if you want to increase if you want the mucus to have a charge, obviously this pH have a influence. Okay, so pH is the one factor which will influence your mucoadhesion. If the pH is not favoring ionization of either your polymer or charge on the mucin, then there will be no bioadhesion. Next, contact time between mucoadhesive and mucus layer. If the contact time is more, you are giving time for interpenetration of that polymer chains. Due to this, there will be more bioadhesion. So if you just keep that let's say I have prepared a mucoadhesive tablet, you just keep the tablet, and if you remove that, if you can't press that, okay, it will not adhere to the mucous membrane. The application process is take the tablet, press the tablet towards your mucous membrane for at least 30 seconds, okay, or you can say not 1 minute, I will say like 30 seconds, okay, you have to press and keep it there. After that, there will be initial contact and consolidation which will lead to the mucoadhesion of that particular dosage form. Okay, next is thickness of mucus layer can vary from 50 to 450 micrometer in stomach to less than 1 micrometer in oral cavity. In oral cavity, the thickness of mucus layer is 1 micrometer, in stomach it is 50 to 450 micrometer. Okay, and this thickness of mucus layer will also influence your adhesion. So more thick the mucus layer, more readily it is providing the glycoprotein chains for the polymer, for the interaction, and there will be more bioadhesion. So and physiological factors like if the person is already suffering from other diseases, it will also affect the mucoadhesion of your dosage form. How? Let's say he is suffering from candidiasis here. Already that mucous membrane is disturbed. So if you keep the tablet at the place where the mucous membrane is disturbed, obviously it will cause the problem of mucoadhesion. So these are the various factors which will affect the mucoadhesion. Then we have principles, or you can say theories of mucoadhesion. What this theory of mucoadhesion says? We have 6 theory of mucoadhesions. What are those? To name: electronic theory, adsorption theory, wetting theory, diffusion theory, fracture theory, and mechanical theory. What this electronic theory says about? Electronic theory says about there will be, I just said you, pH will influence the charge on the polymer and also mucous membrane. Let's say we have a mucin here. These are the mucin glycoprotein chains, and this is our polymer chains. Now for creating the interaction between this chain and this chain, between the two chain, okay, you need to have ionizable groups. So this electronic theory says these two chains will interact by creating the ions. there will be a layer of ions. Let's say this chain acts as positive and this mucin will act as negative. Due to this positive and negative charge, the both will get attracted and there will be a muco-adhesion. That's what the electronic theory says about. So simple thing, electronic theory says about there will be a charge on the particles of your polymer as well as mucin. Okay, this charge, because they are opposite charge, there will be a double layer which has been created and they will be attracted to each other. Next theory is adsorption theory. See, adsorption theory. According to the adsorption theory, the mucoadhesive device adhere to the mucus by secondary chemical interaction such as van der Waals force of attraction and hydrogen bonding. Okay, or you can say electronic attraction or hydrophobic interaction. For example, hydrogen bond are the prevalent interfer. So whatever we discussed in the mechanism, we have a polymer where hydrogen bonds are more. These hydrogen bonds will interact with the these hydrogen bonds are the reason to form mucoadhesion, to undergo mucoadhesion. How these hydrogen bonds are formed? You have carbonyl group in your polymer. If you have a carbonyl group in the polymer, okay, this carbonyl group will form a hydrogen bond with the mucin or glycoprotein which is present in the mucin. So due to this, we have the hydrogen bond is very less. Okay, the energy of hydrogen bond is less, or you can say one hydrogen bond that may not have that much strength to hold that particular dosage form on the mucoadhesion, okay, or you can say on the mucus. But because we have many polymers, there are many hydrogen bonds which are going to form. See here, the most important in adhesion interaction phenomena, because although they are individually weak, although your hydrogen bond is individually weak, the great number of interactions can result in intense adhesion. So very more number of hydrogen bonds are going to form and it will form adhesion. It will undergo adhesion. So this is what the adsorption theory says. So adsorption theory says about there will be adsorption of molecule, or you can say adsorption of your dosage form to the mucin. How this adsorption? We study adsorption in two parts. So how the adsorption takes place, physisorption or chemisorption. We can say this as a chemisorption because there will be a chemical interaction between these two, your dosage form as well as mucin is going to occur. Due to this chemisorption, the dosage form will stay adhered to the mucin. That's what adsorption theory says about. Next we have wetting theory. So what this wetting theory says is, for the molecule, if you are keeping any liquid on a surface, if that liquid has more interaction with the surface, the contact angle will decrease. You can check here. The first diagram tells there is more contact angle. I will try to draw this here. Okay, wetting theory says about let's say you have a surface. If you place a drop of liquid on the surface, if the liquid has more interaction with the surface, then there will be a less bond angle which is being formed and contact angle which is being formed. If the drop is or the liquid is hydrophobic, or you can say the liquid is heating the surface, then it tries to remain like this. So what is happening here? The bond, the contact angle between the surface and your liquid is see here it is very less, here you have more contact angle. If you take like this, you have more contact angle. Okay, the contact angle is more, here contact angle is less. This one is, take other liquid which has adhesion, or you can say attraction between these two liquids, so it forms the contact angle like this. Okay, so this what, if the less the contact angle, if the contact angle is less, there will be more adhesion. That's what the wetting theory says. So for that, what we have to do, the spreading also occurs due to the less contact angle. So regarding the spreading, I have created one video. Okay, I will give the link in the description or in the I button. Okay, you go and check that. Okay, what is wetting and how the spreading of liquid occurs on the surface. What are the equation which governs which the which will govern the spreading of liquid on the surface. You can go and check that video. Okay, the next theory is diffusion theory. We already spoke about this. In what this diffusion theory says about, there will be a mucin glycoprotein chains on the mucous membrane, and this whatever polymer is being diffused into the mucous membrane. So I will show you diagram here for the diffusion theory. There will be a diffusion of polymer into the mucus here. So there will be a diffusion of polymer into the mucus. Okay, due to this what happens, there will be a adhesion, and in turn it will increase the bioadhesion, or you can say mucoadhesion of the given dosage form. So diffusion theory is here, the diffusion thing is your polymer chains are diffusing into the mucus, hence the name diffusion theory. Then we have fracture theory. What this theory says is, if you are attached, see, we have I will try to show you this one here. Fracture theory name says some fracture is going to happen there. What is that fracture? Let's say this is the surface of mucous membrane, and we have a tablet which has been placed there. After placing for some time, if I remove this tablet, so this tablet will get fractured somewhere here. It will get fractured. Why? The lower part is starting to adhere. It has a contact and it has a consolidation. Okay, adhere to the mucous membrane, and if I break it, and I will measure the force required to fracture the tablet. Hence, because we are measuring the force here required to, or you can measuring the energy for fracture, hence the name called as fracture theory. Okay, the name itself says fracture theory because you are creating the fracture in the dosage form. Now, this theory will not hold good if the molecules are diffusing. Okay, this theory only holds good if the polymers are not diffusing into the mucous membrane, if it just adhering at the surface. This theory holds good only to that dosage form which is adhering into the surface. Okay, see here. Consequently, it is appropriate for use in the calculation for rigid or semi-rigid bioadhesive molecule in which the polymer chains do not penetrate into the mucous membrane. Remember GPAT question, fracture theory, we don't want our polymer to be diffusing into the mucous membrane. Okay, then this theory is hold good only when if there is no diffusion. Okay, it may be a GPAT question, remember. Where does the fracture theory holds good? Diffusion, no diffusion, something they will give that. Okay, so there should be no diffusion of polymers into the mucous membrane, then only this fracture theory will hold good. Then last theory we have here is mechanical theory. What this mechanical theory says is, whatever the dosage form you have, let's say you have a dosage form here, whatever the dosage form you have, if you zoom the surface of the dosage form, there will be a rigids in the surface of the dosage form. Okay, when you place this on the mucous membrane, we will also rigids on the mucous membrane. This slowly, the mucus, after placing this dosage form onto the mucous membrane, this is mucous membrane and this is your dosage form. Okay, what happens? This mucous membrane will fill the gaps or rigids of your dosage form. Due to filling up that gaps, the mucoadhesion will occur. That's what the mechanical theory says. See, it says mechanical theory considers the adhesion to be due to filling of irregularities on the rough surface by mucoadhesive liquid. There will be irregularities on the rough surface of your dosage form, mucoadhesive dosage form. This irregular rough surface is being filled by the mucoadhesive liquid. Okay, so this is what the mechanical theory says about. Yeah, by filling, what happens here is this rough, due to that rough surface, the surface area will be increased, the contact of surface will be increased, and more surface is available for the interaction with the mucin. So because your dosage form has the rough surface, this rough surface compared to smooth surface, rough surface has more surface area. It gives more contact area to the mucin to be interacted. Due to this, the mu coordination will occur. So these are the different theories. I hope you understand. Thank you. Today we are going to learn about what are the types of the glasses and what are the tests for those glasses. Okay, so the topic for today is types of glasses and test for them. The glass, test for the glass. So I will not directly jump and say you that this is the type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. We will try to see this in a different way, okay, which will be easy for you to remember. So we will start with type 3. First we will see what are the base for the classification of glass. Okay, the base for the classification of glasses is reactivity. If the glass is highly reactive, it will be categorized as type 4. If the glass is low reactive, it will be categorized as type 1. The glass which is having less reactivity, we call it as type 1 glass. The glass which is having more reactivity, we call it as type 4 glass. So depending on your reactivity, glass is been classified as type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. Type 1 is been least reactive, type 4 is been more reactive. So to start with the explanation of the glass, we will take type 3 glass, which we call it as general purpose soda lime gas. So type 3 glass is made up of your soda, we call it as soda lime glass. Okay, this glass, what is the main composition of the glass? See, in the glass generally we have silicon. Silicon is the main component of the glass. Along with the silicon we will be having potassium oxide, calcium oxide, barium oxide, etc. So depending on the percentage of those potassium, calcium and barium oxide and many things, the types of the glass will be vary. The soda lime glass, the problem with the soda lime glass is, if you take this glass, type 3 glass, pour some solution in this glass, okay, if you keep that solution for some time, this glass will try to impart alkalinity. Means this glass will give, or it will raise the pH of your solution which is being kept in this glass, because it has more leaching substance which will increase the alkalinity of the glass. The substance present in this soda lime glass will leach into that solution which you have been kept in the glass, and they will increase the alkalinity, or you can say pH of the glass. So it is highly, okay, it is reactive. This glass is reactive, okay, it will increase the pH of the solution which is being kept in this glass. Now to avoid this problem, what we will do, we will try to take type 3 glass, which is a soda lime glass, treat with sulfates. What this sulfate will do is, whatever the alkaline substance present on the surface, it will try to mask that alkalinity of the surface, alkalinity of the glass, type 3 glass. Hence the glass will become less, it will impart less alkalinity to the solution which is been kept in this glass. So we get the type of glass from the treatment of type 3 glass is type 2 glass, that is treated, because it is been treated with sulfates, we call it treated. Which type of glass? Type 3 glass, or you can say soda lime, because type 3 is a soda lime glass. You can call it as type 2 is a treated type 3, treated with sulfates. What these sulfates will do is, they will form a layer at the surface of the glass. Due to this layer, there will be less leaching or less increase in alkalinity. What do you mean by that is, if you keep your solution in type 2 glass, this will impart less alkalinity, because all the alkaline substance or all the alkaline chemicals which is present at the surface of the glass is being treated by your sulfates. It will impart less alkalinity compared to type 3 glass. Okay. Next is Take that same type 3 glass, try to add boron or sodium borate. Try to replace that glass, content of that glass with boron or sodium borate. Okay, so the more content, the more you replace that with boron, the glass will become more and more resistant to the any type of reaction. So you will get, after a treatment with the boron, we will get type 1 glass. Okay, and because the main content of the glass, for if you take a glass, the main content is silicon. Silicon is the main content of the glass, as I said in the earlier. Hence the name is coined for this, like keep that silicon here and we treat it with boron. Hence the name is borosilicate. Because we are treating that with boron and the glass main content is silicon, so we call it as type 1 as borosilicate glass. And this type of glass are more resistance. Okay, you can use this glass for parenterals, and type 2 can be also used for parenterals aqueous solutions. Type 3 we can't use for parenteral aqueous solution. You can use it for parenteral oil solutions, because in the oil the leaching of the glass will be very less. The next type is, again take type 3, try to add metal oxide. Try to add metal oxide in the type 3 and try to add silicon also. Okay, more and more silicon dioxide, or you can say sodium silicate, and remove lead from the glass. So when we call it as a lead free glass. Lead free glass. So if you add metal oxide, depending on the metal oxide, you will get color. If you add ferric oxide, you get red color. Like that, depending on the metal oxide. If you add copper, you get blue or green color. So if you want to impart the color to the glass, you add metal oxide to the type 3 glass, you will get this. If you add silicon, more and more silicates, okay, your glass will become more hydrophobic. The glass will become more hydrophobic. Okay, this all type of glass we call them as type 4. This type of glass are more reactive compared to type 3. Type 3 is more reactive compared to type 2. Type 2 is more reactive compared to type 1. Because type 3 is being treated with boron, it will become more and more unreactive. We call it as type 1, that is borosilicate. We treat this type 3 glass with sulfate, hence we call it as treated soda lime glass, or you can say treated type 2 glass is type 3 glass is type 2 glass. Okay, then type 3 is soda lime. Type 4 is this type of glasses. Okay, so we call it a general purpose glass. Type 4 is a general purpose glass. Okay, so this is what the classification of glass. Next we will see what are the tests for the glasses. So there are 3 types of tests for the glasses. So one is powdered glass test, then water attack test, and then is hydrolytic test. See, the main reason for doing this test is, as I told you, the glass is, we classify the glass depending on their reactivity, that is how much alkalinity they impart to the solution which has been kept in that. So we need to see what is the percentage of alkalinity being imparted to that solution. Okay, what is the percentage of alkalinity being imparted? So for that, what we'll do, first test is we'll take the glasses we'll try to take as the name suggests, powder glass test. We take that glass, we crush the glass, okay, take them, crush them, and make them powder, pass them till the sieve number 50. You crush them till it pass through the sieve number 50. From that, take 10 grams of the glass. For this 10 grams, you add acetone. Why we are adding acetone? If there, in case if there is any grease or oily substance present within the glass, we don't want that to present in the glass. So we treat this 10 grams of the glass with the acetone. Then what will you do? We'll take that powders. Okay. After treating with the acetone, take the powder, dry it, glass powders, dry it, then add this powder to a conical flask. Add this powder to a conical flask in which we have water. Okay, we have water in this. Then heat them. Why we are heating? We want to know how much of the alkalinity is being imparted, or it is going to get into the solution of your substance solution, the substance which is kept in the glass. So for that, what we are doing, total alkalinity we are trying to see of the glass. For that, we will crush the glass. To increase the surface area of the glass, reactivity, surface area of the glass, what we will do, we crush the glass into small particles. If you crush the glass into small particles, the surface area will increase. Now from that surface, it start leaching. Okay, the glass, because it contains some alkaline substance, it will leach. This alkaline substance will leach more fast if you powder them. Overall alkalinity I want to see. Here I want to see the overall alkalinity. Hence what I will do, I will crush them, powder them, treat with the acetone. Why we are adding acetone? In case if there is a presence of any oil or grease, we try to add the acetone in that. Okay, then we heat them. Why we are heating them? If we heat, due to heat, the reaction or the coming of your alkaline substance into the solution will increase. The rate of entering of alkaline substance into the solution will increase. Hence we heat this. Okay, after heating, we titrate. We want to know how much alkalinity it has been imparted. Okay, we titrate this heated and cooled water with 0.02 normal sulfuric acid and note down the values. So with the strong acid, we will try to treat it. So the value should be more for type 3 and type 4, and it should be very, very less for type 2 and type 1. So that what the USP says. Okay. We also classify the glass depending on the reactivities. Hence we after doing this powder glass test, we assume that the value should be less for type 1 and value should be more for type 3, and we'll try to see what is the, so that value should be within the range. The next test is water attack test. What we'll do here is, we want to know what is the surface alkalinity of the given substance. Further, take that substance which is to whom you have to test, pour water into this substance. Here we are not breaking any glass. Okay, we just pour the water, fill it up to 90%. Okay, then keep, after filling with the 90%, heat it. Okay, to 100 or 120 degrees for 30 minutes or 40 minutes. You need to heat this. Okay, heat this. After heating, again cool this under tap water. Okay, take 10 ml, titrate this 10 ml with 0.02 normal acid, strong acid. Then you will get some values. Why we call it as water attack test? Because you keep water here inside the beaker whose alkalinity need to be tested, and this water will try to attack. Hence we call it as water attack test. Due to that, the alkalinity will be coming into the water which is present in the beaker. This beaker is the beaker which is made up of your what do you say that particular glass. Okay, this beaker is made up of a glass whose needs to be tested. Okay, the tested glass, the glass which you are going to test, that beaker you are going to take. Okay, this beaker is made up of that glass. Okay, this is called water attack. Here also we try to see what is the alkalinity given by your glass. Okay, type of the glass. Why we call it as the name is water attack? Because we keep water inside. Okay, we don't break inside. Surface alkalinity we are going to try to see here. Okay, we keep water inside and we heat. This water will attack and get that alkalinity into itself, and we will try to see how much alkalinity it is giving. For this also we have standard values. So depending on the type of glass, the glass should not give value more than that the standard value. Obviously borosilicate the value will be very less, titration value, and for the type 3 the value will be more. The amount of 0.02 normal H2SO4 consumed will be more for type 3 and less for type 1. Next is hydrolytic test. The name says hydro water lytic breaking. So by keeping the water inside the beaker for longer time than the test we have done previously, for the longer time, for a prescribed temperature, let's say we keep temperature of 100 to 120 degrees, and you will take a beaker, pour water in this up to 90%. Okay, keep the temperature 100 to 120 degrees for 1 hour. Keep it that same temperature for 1 hour. What happens? This water which is present inside, after keeping to this time, this water will go, heated water will go and try to lyse the chemical present within the glass. Okay, it will break the chemicals which is present in the glass. Those chemicals will try to leach into the water after breaking. Okay, so hence the name is called hydrolytic. This will go and break if you are keeping for so much time. Previous test we are keeping for only less time. Here only difference is for hydrolytic test we are keeping that for more time. So temperature is more, time is more, obviously water will go, penetrate, and it will leach, or you can break the chemicals which is present at the surface, which would not happen in the previous case. Okay, so we call it as hydrolytic. Due to this breaking, whatever the substance present at the surface of the glass, it will come inside, and it again they will increase alkalinity. We need to measure the alkalinity by, here in this case we try to measure a 0.1 normal HCl. We try to use 0.1 normal HCl. You can use any acid, but prescribed acid is here 0.1 normal or 1 normal HCl. Okay, so you will get amount of alkalinity being imparted. So all the 3 types of tests which is been done for the glass, we will try to check how much alkalinity the glass is imparting. Now when you are using some particular glass for particular samples, I think let's say you have taken a blood sample. Okay, so if you keep that blood sample in a particular glass, now what happens if you don't check for the type of the glass and what is the alkalinity that glass is trying to impart, this will change the property of the blood which is kept in that glass, and the results which you are going to test will be different. So to avoid that, we need to test the alkalinity which is been imparted for the glass, and we need to tell that we need to prescribe saying that okay, this type of glass can be used for keeping this type of substance. That's what the main agenda behind this. Okay, I hope you understand. Thank you.